Sometimes you put something on and you smile and you get a feeling and you can't really put a price tag on that. And I'd say that's probably 60% of the materialist in every purchase.
Welcome to The Materialist. My name is Mark Bridge, and I am your host. I am the founder and CEO of, at present, the matchmaker to extraordinary jewelry. The Materialist is a podcast about the things that surround us, the material objects that we make, that we buy, and that we bring into our lives. It's an ongoing exploration of what it means for us as humans to be living in a material world. On this episode, we're joined by stylist, fashion editor, and jewelry aficionado Leya Kaufman to discuss inspiration, the power of pieces with history, and the changing landscape for brands and style media. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to The Materialist. Leya Kaufman, welcome.
Great to be here.
Thank you for joining me for a conversation on The Materialist about the things we make, the things we buy, the things we wear, and an exploration of why that is. Maybe start by telling us who you are and what you do and what your relation is to this subject.
I am a materialist. No.
Good, as an admission, that's start. Box one, check.
My name is Leya Kaufman. I started my career in the fashion industry and quickly found a way towards partnerships. I love creating brand stories and working together with brands to tell their narratives at scale. I was at Couture for a number of years, and now I'm doing a number of passion projects and launching Shop Above Par, which is really where we unpack emerging designers, new brands, and experiences, and how global influences really impact our personal style.
And so you come to all of these things with a lot of experience in the world of material culture. Maybe start by telling me what was the experience of growing up? What was your relationship to things and to consumption?
Yeah, I mean, I wore a uniform in school growing up. And
where did you grow up?
South Florida.
Okay.
Boca, to be precise. And always looked to express myself despite the fact that I was wearing a uniform for as long as I can remember. I would find a colored eyeshadow if I could, or at that time, a lot of costume jewelry would help me make that white polo shirt stand apart from the rest. And I didn't really look to spend or to invest. I was too young, I think, to really grasp what that would look like as I grew up. It wasn't really until I got to college that I think I realized my mom was probably buying most of my clothes, and she has always had great style. She's a style icon of mine. I think I was matched with a roommate who said, I couldn't wait to room with you because you had such great clothes, and I knew this designer and that designer. So I guess my mom had really great taste. I didn't want to say, oh, actually, my mom loved Stuart Weitzman boots, so she got me those boots. But I did really grow into my own in college, and I found even more so a means of expressing myself, especially when it came to the details, the accessories. If you were going to go to class and everyone was in jeans, what necklace were you wearing? Because that was going to set you apart, and it was going to tell a story. So that's where my journey into being a materialist really began.
And what were the reference points? So mom obviously was one, which is always all these things start at home. But when you're in college and looking around, where do you find inspiration?
I've actually heard this more recently, that to do just one thing that's off or unique or weird or unexpected is very in vogue right now, or to be set apart as someone who really does have a sense of style. And I think that's inherent in a lot of us who grew to become materialists at a young age. For me, yes, I would read magazines and I saw what celebrities were wearing and what maybe some of the upperclassmen were wearing. But I went to school in the South. I went to Vanderbilt, and most girls were in pearls and sundresses. And there was nothing wrong with that. But I found that if I was going to wear a sundress, I wanted to pair it with a silver chunky necklace. I wanted to do something that was just a little off, a little unique, and a little weird, if for no other reason, just to stand apart.
What was the first thing you bought for yourself that you can remember?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I think it was probably a collection of things, but when I started making my own real paycheck after that first base increase.
What was your first job?
I worked for a small PR firm for a few months before getting a role with Giorgio Armani. I had been an intern there the summer prior, and they finally had a role open that was right for me. It was very entry level. A few months in, it really grew to be something more permanent, and I remember taking that first paycheck and shopping Danny Joe. I knew that the girls had gone to Vanderbilt. I loved some of their designs. I loved that they were chunky and modern and very cool, and they were crystal, and they had the appeal of diamonds without the permanence of diamonds. And I remember at that time, Armani was also in many ways somewhat of a uniform environment. A lot of black blazers, very sleek, very chic. Pantsuits were very prominent in my office. So I'd look the look, but I'd also throw on some bangles every day that were just a little bit weird, a little bit off, and stood apart.
How has your taste evolved over time?
As I've grown into a more mature individual, I think I've gravitated more towards things that have permanence. I look at the pieces that have stood the test of time in my own closet and the pieces that have been passed down to me. And whenever I make a purchase now, I really do think ahead to not only how long I'll wear it, how many seasons it will breathe new life into a wardrobe, but also if I would be able to pass that down into the future. And I justify a number of my purchases by classifying them as heirlooms. I think many of them really are. I agree with my husband on that, as luck would have it. And we feel very similarly about that. I mean,
say more about that.
Yeah. He does not understand the price of heels in today's market. I came home one time from a black tie event with a pair of Jimmy Choos that I loved because they had an anklet built into them, actually. And I said, these are so great. I'm so glad I bought them. They were a little expensive, but I love them so much. And we start talking about how much they were, and shoes are now $1,000 a pop. Really high-end shoes start there. And he said, I just don't understand that. You're going to wear them twice this year. I just know you're going to wear them twice. And I said, that's not true. They're great classic pumps. I'm going to wear them all the time. I think I've worn them maybe twice in the past 12 months. And he wasn't wrong about that at all. But every other piece that...
Are you still glad you bought them?
I am. I'm glad I bought them. And I'm definitely going to wear them for years to come. But when you break down cost per wear for an item like that in my closet versus the bracelets that I'm banging around in every day or the rings that I stack that all carry significance and meaning to them, it's different. And he'd be more likely to encourage spending more money on a piece with permanence than a pair of shoes. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Some people collect handbags, and I tend to collect pieces that'll fit in a jewelry box.
There is something either rational or rationalization about that. Do we think about these things rational or do we feel emotionally? Do you see something, you're just like, I'm moved by it. I can't stop thinking about it.
It's a perfect marriage of the two. My mom taught me from a very early age, that style icon, that diamond sourcing is like dating, right? It's like finding a lover. They say to look beyond the 4 C's. They say that you really should not just look at a diamond's pedigree on paper. You should look at how a diamond makes you feel when you look at it from every single angle. And when sourcing a new stone for a really beautiful piece or finding the right eternity band, it doesn't only come down to the 4 C's. And she taught me that. And it's not just true for diamonds. I think it really is true for jewelry. Sometimes you put something on and you smile and you get a feeling, and you can't really put a price tag on that. Again, my husband would probably agree with that. The times that we've shopped for something and he'll say, I just can't, the way that your face just lit up. And that's a very big, I'd say that's probably 60% of the materialist in every purchase. But there is that other undercurrent of a little bit more of an objective rational thought process. I do believe that takes place too, where you're thinking, oh, I love it so much. How many times am I going to wear it? Will it be considered a past trend in 6 months? Will I be able to give this to one of my kids one day? And those questions happen in the background while I think the emotion is in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Or if you have seen something so many times, your sense of emotional reaction is very tailored to some objective criteria.
Yeah.
And I think about the ring that I bought as an engagement ring for my now wife. And I saw it, and it just spoke to me in a way that nothing else I'd ever seen had. And so I took it, and then I spent 3 months looking for something that was prettier or less expensive, and I couldn't. I'm like, okay, that is what it is. And so I don't know, that there is something that does, I don't know, resonate on some level.
Yeah, it's the je ne sais quoi of materialism. It's that feeling that you get when you wear something or give something that sparks joy. And perhaps there isn't any rationale needed for that.
Tell me about the most recent purchase you've made that sparked joy.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. Can I talk about something that was gifted to me instead?
Sure. Yeah.
Because I was thinking about this yesterday. I was driving, and I love driving because I get to look at my hands when I'm driving. And they're a journey through time, space, and stories to me. And I was looking at my reset of my engagement ring, and I thought, wow, it's 3 years since I've had the reset, and it feels like this happened yesterday. It's so gorgeous. I can't stop looking at it, and the meaning behind it is even that much stronger. And my husband found that stone that gave him the joy that you had when he proposed over 9 years ago, back in 2016. And then my husband gifted me his grandmother's stone for our 5-year anniversary, but he said, I want you to reset it in a way that you're going to wear it.
Yeah.
And he said, so do you want to put it in a pendant? Do you want to put it in a ring? How would you want to set it? And I said, would you be offended if I set it next to my current stone? And he said, no, I think that's really beautiful. And both of his grandparents survived the Holocaust, and the ring carried a lot of meaning because it was also an upgrade for his bubby years and years ago. And I was looking at that the other day, and I thought, wow, it's not the most recent thing, but by far the most incredibly meaningful piece of materialism in my life.
I feel like as I have gotten older, I have become more, and I do think that there is a way that energy is carried through things. I was just wearing last week a watch that my father gave me that he got for his 21st birthday.
Wow.
And it was like the watch that he wore growing up. And there's just something about this object having lived 30 years on my father's wrist, or whatever it was.
Oh, it carries the memories in a way. Right?
Entirely. And I don't think there are, obviously I am very biased about jewelry. I happen to think that this is just about the best object possible. But are there other things in your life that carry a similar meaning? Clothing, design objects, art?
Yeah, I think it's mainly jewelry, and mainly those pieces that have been passed down in some capacity, or the pieces that we together as a couple or I individually have self-purchased and I intend on passing down. But my mom actually has that style icon again, given me a number of vintage handbags that carry some of that same meaning. She gave me a white vintage Chanel bag a few months ago, and she said, for when you go on your summer trips and you want a pop of something that feels more like summer. And I love it because it's not the shape that everybody has, because it is vintage and it does date back a few decades and it's very unique, but she took care of it. She taught me—
Pretty impressive for white leather.
Oh, yes. And she taught me you keep the stuffing with the bag and you keep it always wrapped, and don't pair it with jeans, she said, especially a white leather handbag. No, she said, no, it's a chic look. Do not pair it with jeans. Keep it away from denim, and don't leave it out in the sun, and don't leave it in certain weather conditions. And it looks like it was purchased yesterday.
How old is it?
At least 15 years, I would say, if not more. And it's beautiful and it's unique, and it's definitely the type of Chanel bag that nobody else is carrying. So that also speaks to that materialism and meaning intertwined. And I love when someone says, oh, I love your bag. I say, thanks, so it's my mom's. It's vintage. It's one of a kind. It has a story. It carries that woo-woo that you mentioned. And
There's
she
probably be a better word for that.
There has to be a better word. No, she carried it so many years in Italy with my dad, and the memories that they captured there together are really, they're part of that bag. And I hope that I can do it justice and treat it as well as she did so that I can carry it for years to come.
I have a friend who has an extraordinary collection of really unique jewelry. And she said once, and it's always stuck with me, when I get up in the morning, I look at my jewelry box and I decide, who do I want to be today? Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do. Sometimes I think I'm cheating on my dual personalities, or that I've created multiple personalities for myself through my personal style. And whenever someone says to describe my personal style, I say it's a mix. Some days I do wake up and I want to feel elegant and I want to be a minimalist. Other days I want to merge more of a Victorian era lock that has been reinterpreted by a designer in Atlanta with a epic chunky chain by Christina Caruso that is reminiscent of Italian links, and they're entirely different and they don't necessarily pair well together. Nobody would have thought to pair them together, and they themselves have different personalities. You wouldn't even merchandise them in a store together, but they work when you layer them.
And so when you woke up this morning, who did you decide you wanted to be today, and how did you effectuate that?
I knew I was going to be on the Materialist podcast, so I had to put a few extra things on.
We appreciate that.
Of course. One piece that I love from At Present, Christina Caruso's Italian links I'm wearing today, but I wrapped it a few times as a bracelet. I wanted it not to compete with a neck stack and to somewhat stand on its own, and I love that it looks like I'm wearing multiple bracelets at once. I am wearing some more unique and I would say ethereal looking pieces. One designed in Israel by Daniel Gerber. I have a snake serpent ring that always makes me feel like an Egyptian princess, which has nothing to do with everything else I've just mentioned, by Ariel Ratner. And it was a really significant gift one year as well. And whenever I put it on, I just feel regal in some way, even if I'm not doing anything regal of the sort and just navigating New York City traffic.
And what of the pieces are the staples and what of the pieces are the embellishments, if that's the way of thinking about it? This is something I wear every day, and this is something that gives me that pop.
I'd say my rings I rarely change up. I might change them every month or two. I add one, I take one away, but they're pretty consistent day to day because, again, I look at my hands all the time, and it's like a curation. It's a piece of art, and I've put my signature on it, and that's what my hands are going to look like for the season. But my neck stack, almost every day I change it up. And I exercise, so a lot of people, they live and breathe in their necklaces, and they sleep in them, and I don't. I take everything off. I take everything off before I go to bed when it comes to my necklaces, because I know if I'm going for a run the next day, I don't want one of them to hit me in the face or sideswipe me if I'm trying to lift a weight. So I take them off, and then every morning I pick out what I'm going to wear on my neck that day. And even if I'm wearing a neckline that doesn't really lend itself well to a neck stack, I find a way to layer something in, on, or underneath because it just feels meaningful, even if it's hidden away. And I think today I ended up with mixed metals and some classic paperclip chains, and I have one pendant there, a little diamond pendant. So yeah, I just threw it all together and it worked. And usually I take one look in the mirror and I make sure it's like a little ungepatched, as we'd say. And then I know I'm good to go.
That's you have to get over that line of ungepatchki, as we would say in our family.
Exactly.
When you see what's happening in the world now, what inspires you from the jewelry scene?
Wow. I think that fine is really becoming for every day. And gone are these concepts of occasion dressing or exceptional pieces meant to only be worn once. So it excites me that you can look on the subway and see someone wearing a cocktail ring. You can discover designers that are emerging through social media. And every day I'm constantly inspired. I find new people and all of a sudden my wish list grows. And I think, wow, I never would have thought that I would want to wear a tourmaline in the middle of the afternoon surrounded by sapphires and it's so extravagant, but I see it on someone or I see it on my feed and it inspires me. And I think the limitness or lack of limit, that it's ever expansive. And I think we're going to continue to dress up and to express ourselves in bigger and more impactful ways, which just presents no end to what design and art through jewelry might bring.
Who's a designer that you've discovered recently that you're falling in love with?
Again, you ask these really hard questions.
We are getting to the heart of the matter here.
How do I pick just one? There's one that I started following back in 2020 when I think she only had 100 followers and she was posting just a few individual pieces, Ruth and Y. And she has since really grown. She has a very vibrant following, and her pieces, when I first started following her, were a bit daintier. And now she has really made a name for herself in chunky, puffy, 14 karat yellow gold symbols, everything from rings to charms. And she's launched hearts and stars and dates and name pendants that are pretty reimagined. And they're not just your typical bubble. They have a very edgy impact. And she just launched a pretzel, a New York City pretzel that is a yellow gold pretzel, and the salt is diamond. It's a diamond array of salt. And I haven't
One
stopped
of my
thinking about
laments
it.
for things that I did not buy. We had, it's got to be 15 years ago, it was a pretzel, same thing with the salt. It was on pendant. And I'm like, I need to get this and make them into cufflinks. And by the time I got around to it, they were all gone.
I did message her. It's not an occasion. My husband jokes it's my birthday quarter, but it's not my birthday.
When is your birthday?
November 26th. So
Happy almost birthday.
Exactly.
Count 2.5 months. Countdown.
It's the quarter. I messaged her and I priced it out and I was thinking of the ways to style it, cost per wear, the rationale, and the emotion was there, but the objective nature of the situation kept me from really biting the bullet. But hopefully one day it'll be on my neck.
For a solid gold pretzel.
That was the thing. I remember saying, I even asked a friend of mine, a very close friend that I commute with every morning, and we both love jewelry, and I turned to her and I said, don't I need this pretzel? Just tell me I need it and I'll bite the bullet now. And she said, I mean, it's very New York. It's very cool. And you probably need it. Maybe not today, but you certainly need it in your array of pieces.
I was thinking about as you were laughing, do you have a friend who you text things to when you want them to encourage you to buy something? Because I do. My college roommate,
yes.
like we have this relationship where we send each other something that's completely ridiculous. And it's like, I need this, right? You're like,
of course. Absolutely, I do.
We need to be able to justify these stuff. Like Mark said, I had to buy it. So
I agree, especially if they're industry people. Because then you're able to say, hey, it wasn't just me. Someone who works in the diamond industry thinks that this is an incredible investment, or someone who studies trends for a living, they've said this is great too. And I guess I have a few of those people.
And is that as uncompelling to your husband as it is to your life?
I actually think it does help a little bit, because sometimes when I walk in and I say I need a diamond pretzel, I think he wonders if I need to be medicated. But I think when I say I need a diamond pretzel and my friend Paige also agrees, he says, okay, I think you both need to be medicated.
We have a home for all of you. We can send you all to the giant pretzel in the sky.
Exactly.
Switching topics a little bit, you've spent much of the recent part of your career in the media world.
Yep.
What is happening in style media?
A lot of change. I think there's been a shift towards creators being editors, and editors.
Define those two things for people who are not as familiar with it.
I think they're becoming one and the same, in that when editor traditionally was and has always been someone with a background in journalism, expert eye, they have curation, experience, relationships with publicists, and they're able to define today's trends and predict them into the future. Creators historically have been seen more as UGC, off the cuff, authentic or inauthentic, however you might look at the space. and a bit more personality driven, known for their own individual personal style. Now I think those two worlds are becoming one and the same. There are still many editors that have that journalistic background and that integrity, and we know their names and we follow them and we bookmark them, but many of them have platforms of their own now, and they're also known for their personal style. And you're not only reading their long form interview with the designer of the moment that's launching that Friday, you're also shopping the sweater that they wore to the office on Tuesday. And I think that's really changed the immediacy that we have for wanting, buying, and really emulating those that we look up to has really changed the space. I've been in the industry for over a decade. I remember the day Instagram launched, and it's changed so much. When Instagram launched, we were still running solely branded content on historic publishing platforms, and it was very reminiscent of print advertising, only digital. Now the options are endless, and many brand partners that I work with have rerouted many of their dollars into what I'd call more new and performance-driven media, or they're working directly with creators to offer more of an authentic take on their brand, on their pieces. They might not expect that someone's going to wrap it 3 times and link it and wear it on their way to the office, and they want to see their brands take on individual narratives too.
What is, the business people always talk about the job to be done, right? Mm-hmm. What does this thing do? What does Instagram do for us?
It's a source of inspiration, first and foremost, and also a conduit to commerce. I don't think it's the only platform that matters. I mean, I would disagree with someone who says that, but I do think it's where trends might emerge and go mainstream. It also might be one of the only platforms in which at least the millennial consumer feels the immediacy that they can act. They see, they want, they buy, they get, they share. And it's very cyclical in that way. And that's what I think the purpose of the platform is. And I think what really the future of media on all of our platforms might look like.
With that as the background, tell us what you're building now.
Yeah, very exciting. Hotels Above Par was founded by Brandon Bergson, my boss. He left his background as a publicist in the hospitality space during COVID and started seeing the world, but in somewhat of an anti-corporate lens. So it was always about boutique, unique, and going into the heart of every city. And it expanded well beyond hotels to cover travel. And when I came on board and we started talking about how luxury lifestyle in and of itself is now very boutique, unique. There's a spotlight on emerging and independently owned brands. And we're building Shop Above Par through the same concept. It's that point of discovery, but it's also a resource. I want for the brands and designers that I discover to have more of a platform. I want them to be discoverable. I want them to be styled in unique ways. And I also want to uncover the boutiques around the world and the designers that have interesting backgrounds and heritage, because they're impacting our style. The global influences really change the way that we get dressed. When we're going on a trip, we not only plan to shop when we get there, we shop before we go there because we want to know what we're going to wear to dinner on that third night, or what we're going to wear to shop around the town, and what handbag we're going to bring with us. I also think that when I'm going away, I'm automatically thinking of the stories that I'm going to bring with me, the pieces of jewelry that I want to wear, the memories that I want to showcase on that trip. So it's a coming together of all of that through Shop Above Par. And we're really excited about building it into something that hopefully has the same following and educated and engaged audience as the Above Par franchise overall.
And so it's this interesting blurring of travel and editorial and shopping, and am I envisioning it correctly?
Yes. Hotels Above Par is always going to be very travel forward, travel first. Shop Above Par, I would say, slightly differentiates in that travel's a part of it. Of course, travel essentials will be a very important mainstay and one of the elements of the brand, but it's more about the global influences on personal style. Global perspective, global designers, emerging designers in that boutique and unique aspect. So the way that we really classify what is above par, it's that thing that can't be touched. Is just a little bit different. We talked about that when we first started our conversation today, right? It's that it's just a little bit different. And maybe that's because it is independently owned. Maybe that's because there isn't a conglomerate behind it that's deciding what the signature scent in the lobby is. And simultaneously, there's that designer that has maybe a background in silver jewelry design, and they source their stones on random walks through Zimbabwe. And that's a story that we want to tell. It's unique, it's different. It's not like just going into any multi-brand retailer and seeing a piece that's been reproduced 100 times. It's different.
I'm so curious because it's so much of the same belief and hypothesis that At Present is built on. This idea that people want something different, and that sort of the global hegemony of sameness is overwrought. And that was my belief 5 years ago. It is still philosophically my belief today. And it has been surprising to me just how much stronger the global luxury brands are today than they were 5 years ago. What do you make of that?
I agree. I don't...
With the desire or the reality?
Let me ask you, do you still have... I don't want to call them mass. They're not mass. They might still be luxury. But do you still have pieces in your wardrobe, brand names that are of the trend of the mass consumption? Because I do.
Of course, yeah.
Do. I find a way to marry them with other pieces, but I don't want to be a carbon copy, cookie cutter of someone else. And I do think there is a move towards that. That was what I loved when I discovered At Present.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my boss, oh my gosh, it's the retailer's version of what we're trying to do at Shop Above Par, is really find these designers and give them a platform that, and an audience, maybe not sell them the product because you're doing such a great job of that, but give them an opportunity to see something different. And they might already own a Rolex, but they don't know what they want to stack with it. I think it's a little bit harder for emerging designers to see the same conversion rate, I think, in some instances. And I don't know if that's because the consumer goes through that rational rabbit hole that we discussed earlier, where they're looking at resale value and they're saying, oh, well, I really love that one-of-a-kind piece, but I could resell a Cartier.
Right.
And they end up moving forward with maybe a more household name of a brand for that big purchase for themselves. I don't know, but I think it'll be interesting just to see in the next 10 years what At Present really grows to be and how the consumer sentiment might shift in the months and years ahead.
Do you think it differs? You're suggesting that it differs on price. If I'm buying something really expensive, I think about it as, oh, all right, is there some asset value? Am I more willing to...
It depends what your budget is.
I suppose that's right. If I'm buying a $69 blown glass olive or a $48 jade ear cuff, all right, maybe my experimentation budget is higher.
I agree. I do. I think my experimentation budget is going to be much higher for a silver fun fashion piece. I was loving that silver choker as part of my edit, and I don't wear a ton of silver, and I loved that I could have fun with a piece that was less than $200, and I could link it, and I could share it, and I could say for less than $200.
We also appreciate the product looks throughout this. This is not branded content, but you get credit.
It's not. I loved that you could tap multiple trends through one piece that really was under $200, which is rare, especially in jewelry. I think it's not just about the resale value. I think you go into the quality of the materials, the value of the materials being used in a particular independent design. For me, I would probably make that mathematical equation work in my favor if I found a piece that wasn't a brand name, that wouldn't necessarily, at least today, have the same resale value, but I fell in love with it because it made me feel that certain way that we had mentioned. if I knew, oh, this is how much the gold weighs, and the diamonds are really high quality, and this is the quality of the diamonds, or the stone is very rare, and look at the color of it. And when I Google, I'll go and I'll say, how much does an emerald look, with that kind of rich hue? How much is that actually going to go for?
Right.
Am I just being duped because I like this designer, or are emeralds really that expensive? If they are, then I'm probably going to consider actually moving forward with that one-of-a-kind and independent design versus something that everybody around.
There's a question on do you start with the price or do you start with the object and then rationalize it? I am very much in the second category. And I remember thinking about my engagement ring. All right, here is this thing. I have no idea what these things should cost. Let me get a reference point. I've already made the decision.
Right.
I'm just looking to justify it because I guess you just don't want to be foolish about it. But
of course,
it is not the, I don't know, I live in Seattle, which is a hyper-rational place, and I'm surrounded by a lot of very rational people.
They probably think you're crazy then.
Entirely. Who start with, all right, I have a particular need. What is the way to optimize this in a spreadsheet? And I'm like, I just don't think that's how you do it.
No, I agree. I think I love to rationalize my own purchases even after I've made them. And I do that sometimes through compliments. Oh, wow. Every single time I wear my snake, someone says something.
Yeah.
I'll be out somewhere at a bar holding a martini and someone will say, who makes your pinky ring? And I'll say, yes, years later was the right decision. But I also do so just by following and continuing and engaging with those designers. I think that's such a unique part of consumerism today, is forging those real relationships. And if I bought something at present, I'm following at present, but I'm also following the designer and I'm learning more about them and their background and why you found them and what makes them unique. And I'm looking at the new pieces that they're creating behind the scenes. And if I already own one of their pieces, I feel like I'm already part of that world. And I think that makes it even more meaningful and imbues more value into that mathematical equation and justification.
Yeah. You have children?
I do. I have 2 boys.
How old?
I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. Time is flying.
And how do you think about them and this conversation? How do you think about them and conversations about consumption? Is it the same way? I imagine you're probably buying clothes for them in the way that your mother did, but maybe not when they're off to school as boys.
Yes, they're very easy. Neither of them have really come into their own personal style too much just yet. My youngest one will wear anything cuddly and comfortable. So when I'm purchasing anything for him, I'm not just thinking about how cute he's going to look. I'm thinking, well, is he going to be comfortable in it? Because if he is, he'll wear it 100 times and it'll be worth it. And boys are, at least mine, are really easy in that way. They want to wear something comfortable. They want to, when it comes to toys, maybe a little bit different. They want the new and the next thing. But yeah, I mean, I see 8 nights of Hanukkah. By the 5th night, I'm like, they don't even remember what they got for the first night.
Sensor.
For those 8 nights, I do go to Amazing Savings, and I think strategically about how to draw out something that you can open for 8 nights when you're 3 years old. They're not getting
the wrapping paper is at least as exciting.
Exactly. They're not getting like a Lego dream house every single night. But I also think even in my own purchases, is this something that they're going to want one day or that their wife is going to love? Is this something I think as a mother in terms of my family too, when it comes to my own style and of course the things that I get for them and for our home, when it comes to the furniture and the big decisions that you make and the travel, and it's everything becomes less about me and more about we, I think.
And when we think about stuff and we think about travel, how do you think about sustainability?
Yeah, I think when it comes to jewelry, luckily, when I do purchase an heirloom, I see the multiple lives that piece will have. Or when I wear the pieces that have been passed down to me, I see the sustainability in and of that. When it comes to even some of the more fashion fun pieces, this bracelet I keep referencing, I know is dipped in recycled gold. I know that a lot of the silver that I gravitated towards this season was also made from recycled materials. I think that is so important. Definitely comes into that equation when you're looking at price and consideration. When it does come to travel and sustainability, I'm thoughtful about I at least try not to purchase an outfit that I'm only going to wear once. And if I am only going to wear it once, I look at, is there a way to rent it? Is there a way to give it to someone else when I'm no longer wearing it? There is a really cool concept called the Exchange Project that a very chic lady started out in Connecticut. And it was built off of this model that you grow tired of your clothes. It's like human nature, right? Maybe you wear a few things for a season and then you just can't even look at them anymore. But it's not there's anything wrong with them. It's not that the brands aren't great. And she built this model where people literally exchange their clothes. They bring a certain number of items, they get a certain number of items, and they're able to feel perhaps a little bit less guilty about their consumerism, because the reality of our carbon footprint is that it's more impacted by the fashion industry. I believe it's like maybe over 10% that it accounts for, which is really rough when you're someone that loves fashion and when you're thinking about materialism and whether or not it matters in the long run.
Yeah, no, and I think about it in terms of travel. And I love to get up and go and feel a sense of dissonance over this is wasteful objectively. And how do I sort that out? And I don't know.
Wasteful to travel.
Yeah, right. We are using
all
the
fuel
planet's
and
resources and adding CO to the atmosphere. And I don't know. I got on a plane yesterday and flew across the country because I thought that there were things that I needed to do here, and get on a plane because there are places that I want to go. I don't know.
But you supported the economy in doing so. And you supported the independent designers that you promote through all of your platforms by networking and having podcasts. And I think there's that tug and pull that we all have.
No question. There's dissonance there. As we come to the end here, I am inspired by Ezra Klein, who's one of my favorite podcasters, who asks everybody at the end of episode for a recommendation of 3 books. But I'm curious in this context if you have 3 makers or 3 designers or things that may be undiscovered that you think people should know about.
Undiscovered. Wow. Can I pull up my phone?
Sure.
Just so that I don't misquote someone's name?
Yeah.
I'm learning and inspired constantly. Every day, I would say, almost. It might change for me. I love Kate Freeman from Encircled Jewelry, who I know you also know very well.
Yeah, we love Kate. Love her pieces.
I also met her, connected with her during the pandemic, and we just bonded over our mutual love of jewelry. I was beading for fun. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I was using plastic beads, and she was beading for art. And the gemstones that she was using really drew my attention. And I actually don't wear a lot of color in my wardrobe. I like to follow her because she brings color to my life. So she is definitely someone that I'd bookmark. It's that source of inspiration, certainly. I would say it's a little bit of a curveball, but Sharon Brand, who is an entrepreneur, founded her own social media agency. She's based in Montreal. Also connected with her in 2020 over a diamond brand, and we've stayed in touch since. And she has a very unique sense of style. I think that she's someone who has that aesthetic that I aspire to, and I also love her perspective because she's in Montreal, and then she's in Paris, and then she's in Tel Aviv, and then she's visiting New York. Always very chic, always very global in her mindset. So she's certainly someone that I would add there. And the other person that comes to mind is Natalie Jacobson. She is a Carrie Bradshaw lookalike or a doppelganger, but she's Australian. And I love the way that she talks about fashion, jewelry, lifestyle. She has epic jewels and a really great sense of style. She's real. I've messaged with her. We've planned to meet up, although
Does she live in Australia?
She does. It's rather far, but she's someone that I always get a breath of fresh air when her feed comes into my vision. And I think sometimes too, because of the time difference, I'll wake up, I'll be in a bad mood. She'll be like at the end of her day and I'll see, all these fun things that she just bought, and she's talking about what her plans are for the weekend. And she's a good follow too.
Cool. Leya Kaufman,
Perfect.
thank you. Such a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here, and I love what you're doing on all of your platforms from At Present to this one, and I hope to be part of your network, not only for your next few episodes, but for everything else that you have in the works, and for all the materialism that I hope we'll share.
There we go. We look forward to it.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Leya Kaufman for joining me, and thank you to all of you for joining on this episode of The Materialist. I'd love to hear what you thought, or if you have suggestions for future guests or story ideas, please send me an email, mark@atpresent.com. The Materialist is a production of At Present, matchmaker to extraordinary jewelry. For more information, please visit www.atpresent.com.